Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Skeleton Key. Not sure who else we have on here. It usually tells me how many people I have, but it's not telling me yet. So, uh, good morning. Happy Sunday, everybody. So, we're doing sprints this week, but we're actually talking about our Haunted Victorian Book Club January pick. And I have Jacki from the Jersey Ghouls podcast here with me today. Good morning, Jacki.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me on.
Always. So Jacki, I know most of us know each other, but why don't you just give a quick intro of you and the podcast?
Sure thing. For those that don't know me, I'm Jacki. I have a podcast called Jersey Ghouls, which I co-host with my friend Marissa. And our whole shtick is we try to look at everything in the horror culture, whether it's movies, books, comic books, art, anything under the horror thriller umbrella. And we basically kick down the door at the sausage party and we give it the woman's perspective on it. I am definitely more of the fangirl, and Marissa she is my academic queen, and she will come full force with her cited academic works, and she is always good to pull in, well, this means this, and this is this, and this is reflecting the subplot of it. She's fantastic with it. She can watch a movie and she pulls all the meat off the bones. And me, I always get stuck on the blood and the gore. And so we are very much a perfect mix of both brains, both sides of the brain that watch a movie. We release episodes every other Sunday, and our podcast is available on your favorite podcasting app, whatever it may be. We're all over. And on social media, if you find or look for Jersey Ghouls, you will find us there.
Perfect. Yeah, and I have to agree, like with your analysis of movies and all of the things, and Marissa's academic brain. It's just this perfect blend that I just, I end up getting so much out of it from like the artistic perspective and the academic perspective, and I feel like I'm stuck right in the middle of that. So it always works. A couple of people here. Good morning. Skeleton Key has been on. Good afternoon, Angela, over in the UK. And we have Vix here too. Interested to hear what you think about this book. Read it a while ago and enjoyed it. Perfect. Okay. I have a funny feeling. I'm not positive, but I have a funny feeling that a lot of us are going to be on the same wavelength with this one. So I know there's been a couple in the book club, and Jacki, you've been on with me in the past, that like all of us have hated it. All of us have loved it. All of us are indifferent. And I think we're going to be along the same wavelength of this one as well. Yeah. So let's jump right into it. So I think most people here have actually read it. Just so everyone knows, this is a spoiler discussion. So if you haven't finished the book, probably click away if you don't want to have any spoilers. But overall, like if we want to go overall first, jumping into it, I enjoyed this. I found it enjoyable. It was kind of a middle of the road for me. I think it was, around your 3.5 star, and we'll get into why. But I have to say, because we all know that last year I was getting a little bit discouraged with the book club because it almost seemed like a lot of our picks were on, the dislike sort of end of things. And I really wanted to bring it to the other way. And I mean, it's nobody's fault, right? You can't predict a book that you've never read before. But overall, this was a 3.5 star read. And I think above anything, it had the atmosphere and it had that sort of pace and writing style that we're looking for the book club. What did you think?
I'm absolutely with you. I'm pretty sure that I have it, if not a 3.5, like maybe a 3.8. It wasn't quite a 4 for me,
no,
but it was definitely a very enjoyable read. It definitely had me, I don't want to say like I was page turning, like, oh my God, what's going to happen? But it had me interested enough that I was very curious. How is it going to pan out? What inevitable twists are going to happen, and what our resolution was going to be for all of our characters.
Yeah, because let's jump into the characters and kind of the layout of the book right off the bat, because I found that there was a lot going on. And kind of from the beginning to sort of halfway into the book. And I'm not someone who has a lot of trouble following along if there's multiple plot lines, multiple points of view, and stuff like that. But I did find that this book did have a lot. And so we had the Lena and Vaudeline story. Then we had Lena's backstory. Then we had the things going on with her sister. And actually, in the London Seance Society, there was murder mysteries going on. It just seemed like there was a whole heck of a lot. And I don't know. I don't know what everybody else thinks, but from the beginning to the middle, I did find it a little bit like I had to really wrap my brain around who was who, and especially like with the London Seance Society themselves, like they had the detectives wound in there and the police and everything. There just seemed to be a lot going on and a lot of characters.
I can say that I liked that the book started kind of mid plot. I like that there wasn't a lot of build up to what happened. I like that we got thrown into Lena was already working with Vodaline and her sister had already passed and the head of the Seance Society had already been murdered. And I liked that we get thrown right in the middle. And there was quite a bit of setup. There was a lot of people introduced, but I feel like for me personally, it was an appropriate amount of time to suddenly start pulling the threads, to weaving
Mhm.
it all together to see how it all connected. So I did enjoy that part. I think the part that uh, I don't know, and maybe I'm jumping ahead, so let me know if I am. But the two writing perspectives of the first person and the third person in between two of our main characters,
Yeah.
I didn't like it at first, but then, and we can get to this toward the end, and I can explain why. I did end up liking it at the end, and when we get there, I'll explain why.
Yeah, and I think I kind of picked up on that as well as I was sort of going through it. And I have to say, like once I got to the midpoint of the book and we had all of that backstory set up, that's kind of when I really started to enjoy it. Like we knew that there was going to be some twists and turns that were going to inevitably come up to explain what was going on in the story, and so I was satisfied. Like when I was reading the beginning to the middle, I was starting to wonder, but then I was satisfied once I got up to that, where the story was starting to build, and we were starting to come up to the climactic part. It's almost like you look back and you're like, okay, we needed all of that set up in order to, get where we were going. So I think I'm along the same lines of that. So let's jump into Lena and Vaudeline's relationship. I liked both of the characters.
Mhm.
I thought they were well done. I thought they were well executed. And I didn't think there was more well, I mean, we did have more focus on Lena, I guess, because it was sort of her sister and her sister's story. That was sort of the central part, but I think Vaudeline didn't get left in the dust. Um, One thing that I wanted to ask, because I was sort of curious about this, and I haven't had a chance to look into it myself, but this is, I believe, the third book in the past year that I've read about like a sapphic relationship in Victorian times. And it makes me think, and if anybody in the comments knows this, because obviously that would be very much hidden away, um, during that kind of time. But does anybody know if there would have been that much sapphic relationship during that period? Or are writers putting it in because they want to focus on that part?
I, I don't know. I know that I instantly, and I don't know if anybody else keeps up and watches Doctor Who, but there is a whole plot line in one of the Doctor Who seasons with a Victorian era sapphic relationship that I absolutely love. Like they're these two just absolutely fantastic kind of kick-ass characters. So from, obviously I don't know. I feel like I've seen it in a handful of different media to where I want to believe, and I guess this is just me wanting to believe. Like, yeah, I want to believe that. Yeah, I mean, obviously, it had to be kept very secret. That was a situation that, that was, I'm assuming, no different than like it was in the 50s in America, where it was illegal, where
Yeah.
you could be jailed. So, it's one of those. I'd like to believe that, those relationships were always there. They were always out there. and, hidden as they may be, they found each other.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's the hope.
It's the hope, it's the dream, and I mean, we know that you can't change who you are, and if you're attracted to someone, you're attracted to someone, no matter kind of what sex they are. And I really did like, I guess, how they handled Lena sort of opening up that little bit that night that she had Vaudeline in the other room, and I think she had, like, her hands against the wall, and it's almost like you could feel this draw between the 2 of them. So it wasn't just like, bam, we're gonna have a sapphic relationship
Yeah.
thrown into this story. I think it was handled nicely, I think it was done nicely, and obviously, I mean, during that period, you're gonna have these 2 women that, um, you don't you don't really know if that other person is gonna feel that way, especially in that sort of situation, right? I think obviously today's society, you would probably be a little bit easier to express yourself in that way. But I think it was done well, and I like the relationship in it. Um, and then I think it kind of when they sort of were in England, and then Lena thought that Vaudeline was basically lying to her the whole time, you really did feel her disappointment and her hurt. And so I think the feelings were handled really well. I felt it. I don't
Mhm.
know if you did.
I did. I liked, as someone that has male friends, platonic, absolutely no romance male friends. I like that there was that character in there for Lena. I like that, there was the other scientist, and he obviously very much liked her, but she, there was never any, well, I like that it wasn't written like, well, I need to conform to society and like he can be an easy beard. I like that she held her ground with like, you're my friend and you're a fantastic friend and I don't want to lose that, but you're just my friend. I liked that relationship. I liked the way that she was portrayed there, and I thought that it was like just a very natural progression with Vodaline. Like I never felt like we were going to like jump right into anything. I liked that there was that yearning and that want and that like, you know, and again at this time she was like, I know I have these feelings. This is the first time that I had a feelings for a woman, but you never know what's going on in someone else's mind. And I almost like that, like you were talking about in that scene, that there was a wall between them physically and metaphorically. You have that wall of, I can't read your mind, I don't know what's going on. And I really enjoyed that Vodaline was very confident and very, she was out and proud. She's like, yeah, I've had relationships with men, I've had relationships with women. She is our poster girl for pansexuality in Victorian times, and was absolutely open and free about it. And so it never felt like there was any sort of rush in that relationship. There was never sort of any, and one day they woke up and they were both in love. It was like, no, it was a very natural progression of them working together and Lena learning things. And then slowly this became just the reality for both of them. And I thought it was done really well. I did like that relationship.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, a woman during that period, um, not only to have relations with both men and women, being found out and all of that kind of stuff. But I mean, she was also a spiritualist, which is a little bit on the outskirts. So she really was that sort of outskirts of society kind of woman, but like you said, out and proud, and this is what it is. And, of course, then that tied into the whole discussion of um real spiritualism or real spiritualist psychics, that kind of stuff, versus, as we know during that time, all of the fakes and all of that sort of stuff that was going on. So she was very staunch in her beliefs on both sides. So that kind of leads me into, and I'm wondering if the author maybe made a choice because we had so many storylines going on. We didn't get a whole lot of backstory on Vaudeline. It was really concentrated on Lena and her family and relationships and stuff like that. So were we missing out on Vaudeline, or was it the appropriate thing to leave that out?
I feel like there was enough exposition on her, that she was a real deal spiritualist. She was not somebody that had parlor tricks literally up her sleeve. I like that she wasn't just out there doing it to doing it. She was focusing on helping families with cold cases be solved. Like, she very much had a purpose. And I think just from that little bit of information, from a little bit of exposition that she had when she was talking to Lena, I feel like I kind of knew enough. And then as you get further in the story, I feel like the bits and pieces that we learned were enough to shape her as like the side character for Lena.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think if we had have delved too much into her backstory as well, there just would have been way too much going on and difficulty sort of keeping track of it. So
Mhm.
let's jump into the questions here before it gets out of hand. Enjoy this book, quick read. Hooked on the mystery. Yeah, I was pretty hooked on the mystery too. I have to say, I think that's what sort of kept me interested. Heard somewhere that young women were offered to off were often encouraged to practice with each other. Oh, that's interesting. Not sure if it was Victorian times or what period, but women definitely fell in love. And we know, like, I mean, being gay or bi or pan or whatever has been, throughout the history of humanity. But that's interesting with the encouragement of
Mhm.
practicing. Like how the fakery was exposed. Okay, so this was going to be my next talking point, actually, because I felt like this was one of those books where you could take what they were talking about and you could do your own research into the spiritualist period during that time and how the fakery happened and all of that kind of thing. I really like when that's wound into books. Like we experienced it during The Shape of Darkness by Laura Purcell, and the one that I'm reading now, The Poison Thread, it has the same sort of thing where you can take the ideas and you could do your own back research during the period. So there was a few things in there that I already knew for how societies or how spiritualists would fake things, but there were some new things in there, and I do want to look it up, and I'm sure it is actually historical. But for example, putting certain scents into the candle wax. So when it would burn down, you would get someone's perfume or whatever. They would do the research kind of on these families to be able um, to, to fake this, basically, to fake the seance and be able to convince people that they were really talking to their loved ones. And we know that that was super prevalent during that time.
It's very clear that Sarah Penner did her research, I think. I think it's in the author's note. She talks about how, some of the stuff she made up. But some of it was very much, even when, like, I think even when you're making stuff up, you need to know enough about it. You need to do enough research to make the stuff you make up sound legitimate. So I thought that that was done very well. And I think this is just a testament to the type of books we read when we're reading modern Gothic, and I will always tip the hat to a good book, whether like whether this is a 5-star book or like a 3.8 star. I can say that I enjoyed the book enough where it like makes me want to go back and do my own research on stuff. Like when we had read The Shape, what was it? I think was it The Shape of Darkness that had the match girl
Yeah,
subplot? Yeah,
yeah,
that was, it's something I had heard of, and I know you and I both, we love history, and it's like, you read about that in the novel, and then it's like, oh well, now I need to go learn about that in earnest and figure more out. Um, Ahead of this book, I've already always really, that sentence didn't make sense. I already are. My brain's working too fast for my mouth to catch up. I had already had a fascination with Harry Houdini and what he and his wife would do, trying to debunk seances, or maybe trying to prove they were real. So I had already had a bit of knowledge about the fakery of seances, and I had always really enjoyed that. And this book, it's been a long time since I've read anything about it, and this book really rekindles that need to, all right, pick up that nonfiction book about seances, or about the hysteria of seances in the Victorian times, even if it's not about the debunking or the fakery, just the stronghold that it had on everybody. That, oh, okay, so ghosts are real, you can contact them for me, I can talk to ghosts, I can get answers. Like it was such a phenomenon. So this I always like when a book will pull me in a different direction after the fact to learn about the setting of the book.
Yeah, when we were doing The Shape of Darkness, I had heard about the Match Girls and everything too, but I didn't have, like, a vast knowledge or anything of it. It was just kind of bits and pieces that sort of came in, my own research and discussions and everything. But I remember when we did the live show for that particular book, Sharon Joy was on the channel, and she's, from England, and she's very, very well versed in that time period and talking about phosphorus poisoning and how it would damage their jaws and stuff like that. And it was just fascinating. So I think this would be exactly along the same lines that you could dive into your own research. And actually, reading this book makes me want to pick up one of my nonfiction ones. It's called The English Ghost by Peter Ackroyd. I have it in hardcover here. That's about the spiritualist movement during that period. So it's definitely rekindled my want to pick that book up and just see how the two tie together. Historical aspects woven in, but as mentioned, the supernatural also being real too. So that's sort of, I really liked how they did that as well, because we have, exposing the spiritualists and the fraud and everything that they were all about, once the girls come over to London. But I did like how they, kept that whole thing where there could be real spiritualists out there. It's like even today, people believe in ghosts or they don't believe in ghosts, or, the spiritual realm or whatever you want to call it, right down to you could have the same house. Some people could have experiences in that house because they're sensitive to it. And other people could be like, you're full of crap. There's absolutely nothing going on in here, because they're not open to it. They just don't have that same sort of sensitivity.
That was one of my favorite aspects of the book. I was very happy reading the ending chapters, and having so much built up about the fakery and the society faking things. And we've got all these frauds left and right. And then we have the absolute, very real spiritual contact. We have the ghosts coming in, they've made contact. I liked that in this book, the magic was absolutely real.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's start talking about the society themselves, because we started with these two women who, it's like, they're spiritualists, they're real. We have the teacher and the student who she's trying to help develop her abilities and all of that kind of thing. And then of course we have oh my goodness, what's the sister's name?
Evie?
Evie, who was an apprentice to Vodaline as well, and it seems like her ability was even a little bit of a step up from what Lena's was. She was very much a natural. And then she, her and Lena kind of had the falling out when we learn about their backstory and everything, and also with Eloise, who Lena had her first sapphic relationship with, and they were best friends and all of that sort of thing. And then we have Evie going over and getting involved with Mr. Morley over in England and the society and all of that kind of thing. And that's where we start learning about all of this fakery, and they would go in and really just fraudulently take all of these poor widows' money. But what I really liked in that whole story with the society was how they would actually marry them off,
Yeah.
remarry them off to other men in the society, so that they could still, it's not just a one and done, like they're still bringing
Mhm.
in sort of that monthly stipend to keep the society going. I really like that aspect.
Yeah, it's a devious plan. And that was one of the things that, you find out that at first you find out that there is all these rumors. There's nothing confirmed, but there's rumors that the London Seance Society is up to some tricks. Um and I don't think I was thinking that far ahead to learn just how treacherous they were being. Like, sure, it's one thing to you're deceiving a grieving family of, that one-time fee, whatever. I wasn't prepared for the extra step of, oh yeah, and we're picking and choosing so we can marry off the widows to our society members. quite devious, quite devious.
Well, I think it was pretty smart because, they probably would have looked at it and said, well, in this case, we're only going to get money if, basically someone wealthy dies and we're able to get in with that widow. It's kind of like it's not assured. It's not assured income. It's
Mm.
not like, how do we keep this going? So that whole aspect of marrying them off to the members was just brilliant because, like I said, you're going to actually keep your business going in that aspect. So I really enjoyed that part of it. I don't know what we haven't had any comments in a little while, but what did you guys think of the deviousness of Mr. Morley and the rest of the London Seance Society? Um, so that was kind of the main part of the story, and I really did like how they wrapped into it, that it was very much a fraternity. It wasn't, women that were involved in this really. And then Evie had to uh, basically dress up in a disguise as a man to be able to infiltrate and get in there. So I mean, she had her own bravery as well. So if we're talking about strong women, like I wasn't sure about Evie at first, but she, once we started getting into what she was up to, she turned out to be just as strong as the other two.
She did. She and obviously she, she used some of that womanly what's the word I'm looking for? Her she used the ability that women have to get what they want sometimes. And at first I know when Lena had learned about it, at first, her sister's kind of, a woman of loose morals,
Yeah.
something she would do as an unwed woman. But you slowly learn to find out that Evie was doing what she had to do to infiltrate the society, to find the wrongdoing within the society. And that it's I like that you mentioned about the character of Evie, because as I was thinking about it in preparation for today, I'm like, she really she is our hero character. I mean,
Yeah.
Lena definitely was, the protagonist of our book, but without the intervention of Evie, we where would they all be? So I really did enjoy that, even as a spirit, she still had that strength. I like that she was still, they both get to be that hero character together.
Yeah. And so it is true. She really did turn out to be the hero in the end. So we have these three strong women. So it's just feminism all over the place, which we know that's what we like to talk about when we're discussing whether it's movies or books. So it was executed really, really well. And then kind of as we're getting into the sort of the end of the book and we know what Evie's motives are, we're like, wow, she ended up being a really strong character. She ended up being on the side of the good guys because we were really skeptical about her there for a while and what she was up to. And so she really did turn out to be fantastic in the end. So I'm going to jump forward a little bit here because I want to tie this in where you were talking about, at the end when they're doing the seance and she gets brought into Lena. And the, my thoughts are kind of two part. Number one, they would have made kind of like a super psychic together, with both of their energies and thoughts and all of that sort of thing. But it really was the closure and the healing of two sisters who had fallen so far apart. One of them ended up dying, so the other one wasn't going to get the closure that she needed. So that did tie that together really well.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if we mentioned the when Evie had been murdered, and that day before she had been murdered, her and Lena had a really bad falling out. So yeah, it was, Evie never got to understand where Lena was coming from. Lena felt horrific because their last words were in anger. And I like that idea of like the two, both of their powers coming together, uniting to make the super psychic. I do like that idea that it could only have been done with the two of them together.
Yeah.
I found it interesting that um who was the Voltaire, the head of the society that was murdered. who
Oh,
happened to be
yeah.
murdered on the same we find out he was murdered on the same day as Evie, which was not even remotely a coincidence because, Lennon knows enough to know that can't be a coincidence that they were both murdered on the same day. Um, and I do like that we find out that they basically murdered each other.
Yeah. Yeah, and, then, of course, we have, right at the end where Lena doesn't want to let Evie go out of her, but she knows that she has to in order, for Evie to go into Morley and kind of finish the job, I guess you would say. I mean, I couldn't even imagine the thought of feeling your sister and having her within you, her spirit within you, and you don't wanna let go because you know that's basically the last time you're gonna experience her energy, but it's for the greater good, so we have
Mhm.
that whole, um, sort of I guess grief aspect coming in there, but at least she would have had closure in the end.
Yeah, no, that part got me on a personal level. I lost a sibling. So the
Yes.
idea of being able to like just one last time. And then when you have that one last time, it's like, oh wait, no, no, don't go, don't go. Like this can't be it. So
Yeah.
I that part I absolutely resonated with the idea because I think just a quick side note, like I feel that way like when I have a dream about my brother. It's
Yeah.
like that's in those dreams, like that's my moments like that, where it's like I wake up and I was like, oh no, I don't go back to sleep. I
Go back
want
to sleep.
more. I
Yeah.
want to talk to him again. Go back to sleep.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So we did have a lot like, it was multi-layered, there was a lot of grief, there was a lot of love and healing, and then we had hurt between Lena and Vaudeline, who loved each other so much, and she thought that she was being betrayed. Like, there was so many layers that were kind of going through this whole story. Um, just quickly checking the comments here. Really wasn't thinking ahead like that either. And then feminine wiles to the rescue, absolutely. The preying on the grieving widows was evil. I'm thinking that they likely did happen in real I'm sure it did. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. That was definitely something that happened during that period. Um, and that's another aspect that if you wanted to look further into the spiritualism during Victorian England, I think, or France for that matter, this is definitely a kickoff for doing some own research. I'm super guilty for falling down rabbit holes all the time when stuff like this comes up.
Now that we've gotten to this point, I can go back to the first person and the third person story
Yes.
perspective. And at first I didn't like it. I think I was just kind of being like, it's not concise. It's not like if you're going to do first person, and if you're not going to do third. But after reading it, after thinking about it, and who knows, maybe she did this on purpose and I'm just slow to pick up on the cues, but I liked that Lena was in third person because that seemed to be reality. And Mr. Morley being the first person, we're in his head. And then knowing the arc that his character takes, you think he's a good guy at first and you think that maybe he's not the most upstanding citizen, but he's certainly not a bad guy. And then as we go through the story and realize that he's just as bad as the rest of them, I like the idea that he was in first person because we're only in his head, and of course he's going to be innocent in his head, and of course he's not the guy doing the wrongdoing, and everybody else is doing the wrongdoing, and it's perfectly justified, all of his actions. But Lena's part of the story is third person because that's reality. That is where everything is actually happening without the input of Morley's inner monologue kind of thing. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
so that's why at the end of it, I'm like, okay, I don't mind the first person, third person shift as much as I did in the beginning.
That's a really interesting analysis. I hadn't thought of that before, but looking back at it, I can definitely see where you're coming from on that for sure.
Mm.
So 2 more points that I wanted to make because I wanna keep this to about 45 minutes to an hour. Firstly, I did find that the ending there it was like it crashed and then all of a sudden everything started to go. It's almost like slow, medium, and then it was like bam, all of this stuff is happening at the one time. Was it good to have it crash in all at the one time like that and have the twists and turns and oh my god moments happening one after the other, or should that have been spread out a little bit more?
Mm, I've, I mean, for me personally, I was okay with it. I feel like that was an appropriate pace for everything to start getting frantic when they introduced the idea that Morley had something on a timer. I
Mhm.
like that we went to that real time panic of, I forget, 10 minutes or whatever it is. I like that things happened. Almost even when we were not in his perspective, we were still on the timer. Whether
Yes.
our, Lena and Vodaline, what they didn't realize it was, they were on a timer. But I liked that that pace was kept up as the audience, knowing that, like, okay, when are they going to figure it out? When are they going to realize, everything's about to go boom? So I didn't mind everything happening at that frantic pace at the very end, because I felt like that was the atmosphere built up to that.
Yeah.
And it was that so I personally liked that it kind of got to that frantic point of the plot twist, and the hero moments, and the comeuppance and everything happening.
Yeah, and I do read some books sometimes that are like slow, 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 bang. And then this one, I think there was like it started out a little bit slow, but it did progress
Hmm.
on the upward trajectory kind of from the middle point onward. So it was like slow, medium, high instead of slow, 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 high.
Hmm.
So I think I was good with that as well. This one would actually be really interesting as a movie also. I think
Hmm.
I think I would watch that for sure. And then the last question that I have, and for anybody in the comments too, what you guys think is, was the Seance Society's records being found too convenient for the story? Or is it something that they probably would have done? Because I know they were hidden away and all of that kind of stuff, but it seemed a little convenient that there would be all of these ledgers and everything that would be able to be found.
Yeah, that was a bit easy. Yeah. I mean, I don't I
Just a
I can't
little.
presume to yeah, I can't presume to think how it could have been written to be a little bit more difficult, but yeah, that one, I feel like they had to kind of get to a certain point. You have to move the story along, and that one might have been a little bit of a giveaway.
Yeah, yeah. But on the other hand, I think personally, what would have been pretty cool is if they had of, is if the spirit of Evie had of somehow, when she had possession of Morley, forced him to say things, but then again, that wouldn't have provided the evidence that she went to the papers with and stuff
Mhm.
afterwards to
Yeah.
actually say these people were really, really evil. So it just kind of popped into my head as I was thinking about it this morning. Was it too convenient, or was it a good way to bring things to a close? And of course, we're all going to have different feelings on it.
Mhm.
I kept getting caught out with all the plot twists. And I think it was done well though. Like there was I don't think any of the plot twists um were unnecessary. I think they were all done well, and it actually acted to bring things together and tie it up into a pretty bow at the end.
Mhm.
It was too easy, and I also dislike that she stayed there reading stuff instead of getting the hell out of there.
Well, yeah.
But it was necessary for the plot. Okay, so I think some of us are probably on the same wavelength of, yeah, but I mean, otherwise, it's like when you're watching a movie, it's like if somebody didn't run up the stairs instead of going out the front door, there
Yeah.
wouldn't have a movie, right? So, weren't bonkers plot twists, exactly.
Yeah.
So, overall last thoughts, again, I really enjoy this one when it comes to the book club. I think this was one of our better reads,
Yeah.
because we had some we've had some pretty bad picks over the months. And this one definitely, even though it wasn't top tier, it wasn't 5-star for anybody that had read it and talked to me about it. Um, but it was enjoyable. It was a nice story. It had a good mystery. The atmosphere and the writing was there. So I think overall, I would call this one a success for the book club, and I'm hoping that we'll get more of these.
Yeah, no, this was a good book. I would say that if you haven't read Lost Apothecary, which was Sarah Penner's debut, I actually liked Lost Apothecary a little bit better than this one. But that has a bit more of witchy content, which I liked. And there's another book, and I think we may have had it up for voting in the book club before, but A Dreadful Splendor is another really good book set around seances and, is it fake, is it not fake, and there's a family involved. And I read that book, I think last year or the year before. So A Dreadful Splendor is another book that if you liked this one, I think that you would like that one as well. But yeah, I would say that definitely check out Lost Apothecary too.
Yeah, and I'll definitely read Sarah Penner again. I think her writing style was fine. Her pace was great. I liked her characters and the atmosphere, which is what we're looking for in the Gothic. So I will definitely check her out and look up other books on the whole spiritualist movement. Like I said, I have the English Ghost here, which would be a really good read to follow this one up with. So Angela is saying that in the bibliography, there's a recipe for funeral cakes. I read
Mm,
it on audio, so I didn't see that, but that's pretty
yeah,
cool. The Lost Apothecary is probably better if you ignore the modern timeline. Okay, interesting point.
yeah.
Okay, so I think that's pretty much it. I'm going to wrap it up. So we will talk about just very quickly before we go that for February, we're reading The Poison Thread by Laura Purcell. And Laura Purcell, I think, is probably one of my more favorite Gothic authors, especially after reading The Shape of Darkness. I'm a few chapters in, and we also have a dual perspective in that one as well. One perspective is from a poor girl, and the other perspective is from a rich girl. So we have kind of that juxtaposition, and then the phrenology wrapped in. It came out with a bang with, talking about different shapes and different areas of the brain that affect certain behaviors. So I'm really, really enjoying it, even though I'm only a few chapters in. So if anybody is interested joining in February, of course, we'll have that discussion at the beginning of March. Went to the publisher's site for the extras, but it wouldn't load. Okay, interesting. I'll have a look for that funeral cake recipe because I think that's pretty cool. All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you so much, Jacki, as always, for coming on the show.
Thank you
Always
for
a pleasure
having
to
me.
have you here. We're always on each other's stuff, which is fantastic. We very much have the same sort of brain, so it's always a pleasure to have you on. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining in. We're at about 46 minutes, so great discussion. It was a good book. I'm glad we're all on kind of the same wavelength of our thoughts on this one. So we'll see you next time, guys. Bye.
Bye.